to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And we have a fabulous topic this week, and this is a topic which I know that Joy is going to be incredibly excited about. It's a topic that Joy and I have discussed at length prior to us making this podcast, and I know she's going to have lots of opinions on this stuff. So, today's topic is Overplayed Classics.
How did I know that's where this was going? I'm going to start with Don't Stop Believing, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so I looked online and I racked my brains, and I had a look through what was considered an overplayed classic, and lots of people online have opinions about this. Now, I should just start this off by saying that one thing that we have here in the United States that a lot of our UK listeners will not be familiar with is FM classic rock radio. So like in England, it's top 40 or classical or BBC. There's not really the classic rock FM format that every town in the United States has. So that said, much of these songs that we're going to discuss are ones that they'd be familiar with from bands playing them or being on TV and stuff like that. But every Clear Channel FM radio station plays much of these songs on a loop. It's like they have a music library of about 15 songs.
Yep. And when I was I was in high school and I took some college credits. We did one where we visited a radio station. And they explained to us about basically they get money to play the same songs over and over and over again. So that's why you're hearing Journey, AC/DC, so on and so forth on repeat.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to that, what they call that Arbitron ratings, which is, I think they ask people what they listen to on their commute, and there's like a book they fill in, and
yep.
So, and I think there's something to do with if they have the radio on for a certain amount of time and they turn it off after a certain amount of time, that it all goes with those ratings. But anyhow, that being said, I will open up with the one that you mentioned at the very beginning of this. I mean, I've got...
How did I know?
Yeah, I've got quite the list, but yeah, right there on my list, I think number 5 on the list, in no particular order, Journey's Don't Stop Believing.
Of course. That's all I can say, of course.
So, I mean, I would say the first time I ever heard that, I thought it was a great song.
Truthfully, I love Journey. And it is a great song. The problem is it's weirdly one of those songs that I think got a recent kind of resurgence. Mm-hmm. I think that there's 2 reasons. Glee. Mm-hmm. Glee had and I don't know how much you know about Glee, but Glee did a whole Journey album, and they had a whole thing with Don't Stop Believing in the 2000s. Mm-hmm. It was their main song. They pushed it. And so I think that Glee made it more popular. And it says Family Guy did an episode where it was basically about how much people like Journey, and the whole thing was about Don't Stop Believing. So I think things like that have brought it more back into prominence. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I can appreciate some Don't Stop Believing 5 years ago. I can't appreciate it now because I've just heard it so much. And the thing about it is I think you've talked about this, Tim. You've talked about people in bands. It's always like these bands when you go to like clubs or bars or whatever, they think they can be Journey. But the lead singer of Journey actually has a really high, beautiful voice. Mm-hmm. It's not that easy to sing. And everybody tries to modulate it. And when they modulate it, it just doesn't sound right. Or they do this thing where they don't modulate it and they let you the band play it in the key that it's written in, and they sing it in what they can sing it, and it doesn't match and it sounds weird. So I think that's also contributing to the Don't Stop Believing hate.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, there was that Glee resurgence, and every cover band plays it, and FM classic rock radio plays it every 3rd song, and it's like, goodness me. Journey has got hundreds, maybe tens of
probably
20 albums, 15 albums, something like that, and all of it is good music. And in fact, even the Neil Schon, the guitarist from Journey, he says that when they tour, he's sick of playing what they call the Dirty Dozen, and the Dirty Dozen is like the 11 or 12 hits.
imagine that's true of every kind of really on it. But can you imagine it's probably Don't Stop Believing, Faithfully, Any Way You Want It, Wheel in the Sky, that kind of genre. They're probably playing 24/7, I would imagine, right?
Exactly.
I can't really blame them. But at the same time, it does go to show that some songs are like just like Bohemian Rhapsody for Queen. They transcend and people can get energized in it. It's hard when you hear them constantly, but doesn't that say something about how good the artist is in the long run, though, truthfully? Okay, but in all seriousness, though, like, so these songs that kind of like we hear over and over again, as much as they drive us insane, think Neil Diamond, think Queen, think Journey, doesn't that kind of tell you, though, as an artist, how good they are? Because it transcends time.
Well, that's true. But equally, you mentioned Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. I mean, the first time I heard it, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's
110%.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece. But the 300th time I heard it, I thought, well, what about the Prophets song? What about You're My Best Friend? What about I'm in Love with My Car? What about 39? There's so many other good songs, even just on that album, that never seem to get played. And it's got to the point with Queen where they had this resurgence. They're going out and touring now with Adam Lambert, which I'm not a big fan of, but that's beside the point. But, but there's this big resurgence. They had the film that came out, and people who didn't know Queen have discovered them. But what they've discovered is Queen's greatest hits is what they've discovered. Mm-hmm. And sitting at the top of that list of Queen's greatest hits is Bohemian Rhapsody.
And the other thing about it is it's kind of like, think of like the Beatles' one album. Mm-hmm. That's what is every song everybody knows is a Beatle. Probably every song that's on the Beatles' one album, truthfully. But like for me, the one that I think of, because Tim's a big Queen fan, but my favorite artist is probably Billy Joel. We've been through this. Maybe the Spice Girls, they rank up there. That's only for people who judge me for that one, but it's true. But for Billy Joel, it's Piano Man. Mm-hmm. I'm so tired of hearing Piano Man. It's a great song. He wrote it well, but there are like 4,000 other songs that he wrote that are fantastic. And the thing about it is when you come across a really good artist like Queen or Billy Joel or whoever who writes and sings and produces their own music, it is next level because they're involved in every step of the way. And it's almost kind of sad that we're stuck in this top 10 kind of whatever the radio plays at any given moment, because it almost feels like it's doing a justice to people who maybe don't take the time to find those other songs.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's like a lot of these classic artists are being condensed not just to a greatest hits, they're being condensed to 2 or 3 songs. And in fact, I've looking on my list of songs to discuss. I mean, these 2 songs I never ever want to hear again, and I'll be very happy never ever to play them again. Sweet Home Alabama and Freebird. Now, both of those, probably the first time they were heard or the first few times they were heard, you think, oh, Freebird, what a great song, and it's got this big guitar solo in it, and it's blah 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 blah, and it's an anthem. And even Sweet Home Alabama is, it's got lyrics in it. It's got Neil Young mentioned in the lyrics. It's a whole thing. But most people who are not fans of Skynyrd, you say, well, what do you think of Lynyrd Skynyrd? And they'd say, well, I know Sweet Home Alabama and Freebird. And that is where it ends. They don't know about the other 10 albums they have.
Well, and I am anti-Sweet Home Alabama. It is literally one of my least favorite songs in the world, but you're probably contributing to why it is. It's just overplayed, and it's one of those songs that I've heard where I grew up in the South in the United States. It's just one of the songs I've just heard on repeat till it's basically beating a dead horse in a sense. And I'm sure people in Alabama would be like, really, Joy? But in all seriousness, that is one of my least favorite songs. Freebird, obviously, if you've ever played in a band, will make you want to beat your head into the table because what's one thing everybody knows? Freebird. Everybody thinks, and they always think they're being original, Tim. Every person who's ever yelled, play Freebird, thinks they're being original or they're being like this fun, exotic, drunk person. Is like, no, you're just like every other drunk person I've ever come in contact with.
And the other thing as well is that the whole shouting out for Freebird, it's become one of these things that's transcended genres of music. Because I've heard that, you go to a rock concert, a bar band or something, and someone will shout Freebird, and that's within the genre. But I've heard that if you go to a EDM concert, or if you go to boy band music, or whatever your genre of music you like, it's become a thing that you shout out for Freebird.
I'm just going to tell you the truth. If I go to my Backstreet Boys concert and someone yells Freebird, I'm going to be like, shut up! You're going to hear a drunk Joy at the distance going, shut up! Because right now is not the moment when I'm watching a Backstreet Boys concert that I want to hear Freebird. I mean, Freebird has some great lyrics, and it musically is gorgeous, but it's just one of those songs that I truthfully, maybe you guys can confirm it, I don't want to hear. I just don't want to hear it. I've just heard it so much, I don't want to hear it.
No, and for me, it's one of those songs that I've played it in probably more or less every band I've been in, give or take. And unlike one of the songs I'm going to come on to in a second, it's fun to play, especially when you have a really great guitarist beside you and you're doing all those trading licks. And as a lot of the UK listeners would know, I re-recorded that song virtually over lockdown with the members of my old band Rough Justice, and that was a joy to do. Get to play guitar with Mike Stoner again.
It sounds amazing if you want to go listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, you look up Tim O'Sullivan guitarist Freebird and you can find it. But that big plug. But that was a lot of fun to do, and because you get to play some cool lead guitar and you have another cool guitar player beside you, and it's fun to do. But that said, every cover band, bar band doesn't need to play it, and certainly the radio never needs to play it ever again.
Ever again. Ever. Just... I mean, if you guys can't hear us right now saying Freebird and the music doesn't start playing and the lyrics start playing in your head, maybe you're not the right audience. But there are people out there who know what we're saying. And it's not that we don't like the music. Like Tim said, even with Bohemian Rhapsody, we loved it. When I think about Bohemian Rhapsody, Tim, we talked about this in the previous episodes, I think a pop-up music video on VH1. Because when I was like probably 3, 4, 5, because early 90s, we talked about this. Tim is much older, not much older. That was rude, Tim. Tim is older than I am. But my mom used to watch pop-up music video, and I learned about Bohemian Rhapsody through pop-up music video. It's true. I remember watching the video, and I remember watching the little heads pop up, and it was black, and it was the operatic. And for a child at 3, 4, 5, that was very interesting that I still to this day remember seeing that. And so it does speak to the iconicness of it. It speaks to what makes it what it is and why it transcends. But at the same time, there are so many other Queen songs I just want to hear.
Yeah, and it comes back to what I said before, where like complete discographies of iconic artists are not even being distilled into the greatest hits package. They're being distilled into 3 songs or 2 songs or 3 songs.
But Tim, is anybody talking about the most iconic Queen thing ever? Flash. Ta-da! Savior of the Universe.
Well, sadly they're not. Which I mean, I have a good tolerance for hearing the Flash Gordon song over Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm completely burnt out of Bohemian Rhapsody at the moment. Though that said, I did get to meet Sam J. Jones, Flash Gordon, at the beginning of I think it's the tail end of last year. So
speaking to a very subset of people who realize what we're saying right now.
Exactly. I thanked Flash for saving the universe, and he said, "It's cool, man."
Well, what's funny is, Tim, when you were talking about the Flash Gordon, when you were talking about the album, I said something to my husband, and like I said many times, he's not a big music person like we are, but for 3 days straight, that's all we wanted to hear was the Flash Gordon album, like the track. And I was like, well, at least he appreciates good music, because that's all. I don't even know if Tim, truthfully, I don't even know if he knew Queen was doing that. But I was making a joke about Flash, Savior of the Universe, and he knew that much because he'd watched Flash Gordon. And so then he went and looked up, and he's like, "This is amazing!" And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And I was like, "Did you know Queen?" And he was like, "No."
Well, you know the good thing about the Flash Gordon soundtrack is it is like one of these old-fashioned style soundtracks that it has the film sound bites in between each song, and if you listen to the soundtrack album, it's actually the story of the whole film from beginning to end.
Whoa. I've listened to that many times that I don't think I do. Now I need to listen to it from beginning to end and think about what you just said, because it's never even dawned on me. I've always just sang the silly songs.
Yeah, no, because I mean, at the very beginning, and then it goes all the way through, and then Dale gets married to Ming, and then there's the football. This is when you realize
Tim knows way more about Flash Gordon than any human should. Yes.
You say that, but I'm part of the Flash Gordon Facebook group, and there's people that know more about it than I do.
That's that I don't know if that makes me feel better about humanity. If it makes me feel worse. I mean, there are worse things people who be caring about. I'm just giving Tim a hard time. Okay, Tim. So what else is on the list? What else are we? What's in the top? Whatever.
Okay.
10, 15, whatever.
So for me, the song, which I never ever want to hear ever again, and equally, I never ever want to play again. It's a song which I'm very lucky that I can play reasonably well, and people like me playing it. And I've played it in, again, more or less every band I've ever been in, from the first band I ever played in 1991, 92, when this song was brand new. However, I'm so sick of it, when I hear the intro to it, I have a reaction where I have to switch it off. And that song...
reaction.
Yeah, that song will be Sweet Child of Mine, Guns N' Roses.
I can't agree with that. I mean, I liked Guns N' Roses. I'm just gonna, you guys come from the internet. They're not my top band. They're okay. I know they're musically talented. I know there's people out there who absolutely love them. Don't get me wrong. I know Axl Rose's voice is iconic in the sense that it's different than anybody else's. It's strong. Sometimes it feels like he's screaming at me though, because I don't know that he is musically trained somebody can tell me he went to Juilliard. I'm not saying he didn't. I don't know this. I don't know for sure, but just listening to him, it doesn't sound like someone who's been vocally trained. So a lot of times it sounds like he's screaming at me. And musically wise, they're just not on the top of my list. I mean, let's be honest. Take Me Down to the Paradise City is not one that I can hear a million times either.
No, but equally, Paradise City, Night Train, any of those classic Guns N' Roses songs, I'd happily hear Paradise City a few times, and it'd be like, this is a good song. You know, you'd like it or you wouldn't like it. In whichever case, it's okay.
Yeah.
But there's something about that Sweet Child of Mine. When you hear that opening lick of that song, I've heard it so many times, and I've played it so many times. My brain cannot accept it any longer. It's like my brain is full now.
That's how I feel about Sweet Home Alabama, so I understand completely. You've heard my theory about growing up in Southwest Virginia and every male with a guitar. When you're into a lot of music cliques and musical theater, they all think they can play Sweet Home Alabama on repeat. They can't, first of all. It's not even that hard a song to play, but they all think they're good at it. And it's just like, when I physically hear Sweet Home Alabama, I get almost like upset. Like, I just don't want to hear it anymore. And I feel like that's probably the way you feel about Sweet Child of Mine. Yeah,
and I think Sweet Home Alabama is almost on the same level for those two. Again, I've played that in so many bands, and it's easy to play. It's D, C, and G all the way through.
Yep.
And there's got a few solos and stuff, but it's like you say, it's a simple song to play that most people who play a few chords can do it. But
they all think they're good at it.
Yeah, I'm almost at exactly the same point where my brain is completely full of that, and you hear that opening figure of the song played clean on a Strat, and it's like, I had almost. In fact, I do. I had the same reaction of Sweet Child of Mine. And in fact, I like to call those two songs the confectionery section, because you just want to get rid of the sweet.
And the other thing about it is Kid Rock made it so much worse with his stupid song recently. And I like Werewolves in London. I absolutely adore Werewolves in London. So what is the Kid Rock song called? All Night Long or something? I don't know. Whatever.
I blocked it out of my brain.
Whatever the song is that Kid Rock did, that's a mashup of Werewolves in London and Sweet Home Alabama, because let's be honest, that's what it is. Every time it comes on, I hear the intro and I think, oh, they're playing Werewolves in London. This is exciting. And then it goes and I'm like, oh, why? Because I literally start thinking in my mind, because I love Werewolves. I know it's a little overplayed too. It's kind of a stereotypical song, but it's definitely not as overplayed as like Sweet Home Alabama or Journey, and I appreciate it for what it is. It's fun. Yeah. And then it's like, first of all, I don't care for Kid Rock in any way. period. Just tell you the truth. He's not on my list of people that I'm going to go see in concert. You may enjoy him, and that's perfectly okay. But then when I get excited to hear Werewolves in London, I realize it's that stupid Kid Rock song. It's the most disheartening thing. Anyway, Tim, what else is on the list?
Well, I was just going to say, I just remembered it's All Summer Long is the name of your favourite song.
I tried to mentally block it out.
I will say one thing about Kid Rock, though. We may have covered this before, but I saw Kid Rock. I think I told this story. I saw Kid Rock in London, and he actually put on a really good show.
I think you told me, but I don't think you've told the podcast.
Oh, well, I saw Kid Rock at the Shepherd's Bush Empire in London in the mid-2000s, I believe it was, 2005, 2006.
Right before he tried to run for senator.
Yeah, this is when he was in his Rock and Roll Jesus album outfit, where he was wearing like some kind of white suit affair. I will say that Kid Rock did put on a very great show. The Shepherd's Bush Empire isn't a big venue. It's smaller than the Hammersmith Odeon, but it holds a few thousand. But it's a reasonably sized venue, but it's not like a big stage.
I like how he names this other place in Europe like I'm going to know what it is, but I'm smiling and nodding everyone.
Joy, we are appealing to an international audience.
I know. It's just funny because I'm like, am I supposed to know what that is?
So our friends in the UK will know what that is. Some of our friends in the US might be enlightened and might want to look it up, and then other friends throughout the world would think, I might want to look that up too.
No, I'm just giving a hard time. Continue, Tim.
Yeah. But the thing that annoyed me about Kid Rock was that he played a lot of his hits, but he played very short snippets in medleys. So he would start the song, and you think, oh, great, it's this one, and then he would segue into another song. And it's like, oh... And in some respects, he lost the momentum. The other thing that he did...
Yeah, that makes sense.
He was, I believe the expression, he was showboating. I believe that's the expression. Where he would play a bit of guitar, then he would get on the drums, and then they had a DJ on stage, so he did some of the old scratcher, and then he did a bit of singing, and then he did a bit of dance, and it was just like...
Was he good at all those things?
Well, none of them struck me as not being...
That well did not say he was good at all those things.
Well, none of them struck me thinking, oh, Robert Ritchie, you shouldn't be on the drums. But it was fine. In the context of the gig, it was fine. But as my wife, who's from Franklin County, Virginia, said, she'd never seen so many John Deere hats in one place outside of Franklin County.
I don't know what to feel about that, but anyway, Kid Rock brings them in, guys. All right, Tim, what else is on the list?
Okay, well, this is one I think we discussed the other day, and I'm happy to bring it up here on the podcast. But this is another one of these songs that they play every fourth song on classic rock radio, but also every film you ever see where there's somebody on a motorcycle or somebody wearing a leather jacket.
Well, I know where this is going.
Yeah, or someone who's a little bit above the law, to use Knight Rider terminology. It is George Thorogood's Bad to the Bone.
Of course it is. And you know what's crazy about that song? It's a great song. Truthfully, if I'm in the right mood and it's playing, I'm going to blare it. I'm going to feel really good. Truthfully. But it has literally been used. I can think of like 17 movies off the top of my head. Most recently with that weird dad movie with John Travolta, where it's like 10 people who were used to be movie stars and now they're old. And they did like some dad movie and they're all riding motors. It doesn't matter. Someone out there's going to know what I'm talking about. But literally the trailer is just them riding motorcycles to Bad to the Bone.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could think of on The Parent Trap with Lindsay Lohan, the newer Parent Trap, not the older Parent Trap.
Mm-hmm.
Lindsay Lohan, she's supposed to be this hardcore poker player, and she's playing against herself because her twin is literally herself. She comes in and she's like got a bunch of coins in a sock, and she's like rolling it around her hand. And what's playing in the background? Bad to the Bone.
Yep.
I could probably sit here and think of 30 movies, right?
I mean, I'm sure if you actually broke it down and researched it deeply, and like I said, every film ever that has somebody on a motorcycle or somebody wearing a black leather jacket is going to have Bad to the Bone in it. And the other thing, I think it probably started off being where you would see a R-rated, 18 rated for the UK rated film, where there'd be some serious stuff going down, and they play Bad to the Bone. And then I think it's got to the point now where these movie directors are using it ironically, like Bugs Bunny will come in on a motorcycle, and then they play
humorous at this point.
Yeah, and they play Bad to the Bone. And it said if that isn't bad enough, the on like FM rock radio, they play it continually. Yeah,
well, and I mean George Thorogood. I mean, he didn't have. He's a good musician. I think as far as a guitarist, Tim could give you more detail. I think he's known as being a pretty good guitarist.
Well, George Thorogood does George Thorogood very well. He's one of these guitar players who, like the Edge from U2, maybe not a virtuoso in the sense of a Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, and Eddie Van Halen, Don Petrucci. He's not that kind of virtuoso, but he has a very incredibly distinctive sound. The minute you hear it, you know it's him. And the Edge is the same, where he has that delay, that clean compressed sound with the delay, and you hear those opening bars of a U2 song, and you know it's the Edge, and you know it's U2. George Thorogood is almost the same. He plays with a slide. I believe he plays in an open tuning, and he has a very, very distinctive sound that he has when he plays guitar. That said, if you listen to any George Thorogood album, and most of the ones you're ever going to find are like the greatest hits of George Thorogood, and it's going to be called Bad to the Bone, the greatest hits of George Thorogood, more or less every song sounds exactly the same.
So do you think of him as a one-hit wonder? I kind of cut you off a minute ago. I was going to ask. I don't know how to think about him, but in my mind, he kind of comes off as a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, because I think if we think of these other bands that we've discussed, Guns N' Roses, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Queen, Journey, they are artists which have huge back catalogues, and even the moderate music fan would be able to mention 2 or 3 songs extra apart from the ones that are always in the rotation. I think George Thorogood, I am a fan of music, and I think he's got one other song. It's on One Whiskey, One Bourbon, One Beer, or something like that.
Yeah, there's One Whiskey, One Bourbon, One Beer, and there's some song called What Do You Love? Or something like that.
So yeah, but I mean, he may have a huge back catalogue, and he may have some very passionate fans, but I think even for music lovers would consider George Thorogood a one-hit wonder. That said, I'm sure he's living a very happy and comfortable life from the licensing of Bad to the Bone.
That's exactly the thing. And think about how much money we're sitting here going, oh, you're a one-hit wonder. He has probably made so much money off one song. If I produced one song that had been used in 70,000 movies at this point and could live off of it, I probably would too, truthfully, Tim. Telling you the truth. Like, I'd be like, well, I got one song, got enough royalties to live off for the rest of my life, and I'd live my best life and keep going.
Exactly. I mean, I've been lucky enough to play on commercially released songs. I played on the Frequency album, which is now on Spotify. I played on the John O'Leary album, which was commercially released and is now on Spotify. And I had a lot of fun doing it, and I'm very proud of my work with all those people I've played with.
Joy's on some YouTube videos where she's singing in choirs that no one cares about, but that's it.
But that said, we're all proud of the work that we've done. However, nobody's licensing that stuff that's in every third film that has a biker in it.
Exactly. Or every third film where someone thinks they're a bad word I'm not supposed to say because we're PG. Continue.
There we go. So I would say, despite that, good on you, George Thorogood.
Yeah, live your best life. Do what you want to do.
Well, I have it. As I work my way down the list of these overplayed classics, one other one. Again, this is another band which has a huge back catalogue, and again, I think most moderate music fans could name a number of their songs, but this is the only one that anyone ever seems to play. Def Leppard's "Pour Some Sugar on Me."
How did I know? That's like, well, let's be honest. If I'm in the right mood, "Pour Some Sugar on Me" sounds great. It's actually one that doesn't get me as worked up as some of the others. I don't know why. I know it's overplayed, but I guess I just don't listen to places that play it. Mm-hmm. But it's not one that gets me that upset. But I do know it's overplayed. I do know it's the song anyone knows from Def Leppard. I mean, is it played a lot in bands, Tim? Like, is it one song that's requested a lot, or
it's rarely covered in cover bands, and the reason being, is that the arrangement is very clever. It's a Mutt Lange production. And as we know, talking about Shania, Mutt Lange is
which I was listening to today.
yeah, he's a genius in the world of production and songwriting and arrangement and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it has a stellar Mutt Lange production. So sonically, it's fantastic and the arrangement is great. But what it has is all those vocal harmonies. And
oh, that's true.
And on the track, you probably have one Joe Elliott, and then one Phil Collin, the guitar player, and then you probably have 65 Mutt Lange stacked in the background.
Not Phil Collins, which one time I thought Tim gave me a whole story about Phil Collins, but it was Phil Collin. That happened once.
Yeah, Phil Collin.
I was very confused, everybody.
It's an easy mistake to make, and you wonder when they were ascending into the world of fame whether Phil Collin ever thought of maybe, if his middle name's Bob, we call himself Phil Bob rather than Phil Collin.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah. But as I said, it's one of those songs that just, when you say Def Leppard, most people say, "Oh, pour some sugar on me." And I'm sure when you go to see them, I've never seen them in concert. I'd like to.
Yeah.
I'm sure when you go to see them, they probably close out the show, or that's the big song from them.
Well, the Hysteria album, though, in all seriousness, had a lot of their hits, did it not? Like, you've got Love Bites, Animal. So I feel like that was probably a big album. And truthfully, if you're talking to a non-music person, that sounds weird, but somebody who doesn't really spend a lot of time thinking or breathing or eating music, Hysteria album is probably what they attribute to Def Leppard.
Yeah, I mean, Def Leppard's Hysteria is absolutely fantastic from beginning to end.
It would probably be the second.
And the reason it is that when they made that album, I said Mutt Lange produced it, and what he wanted to create was a hard rock Michael Jackson's Thriller. That was the brief for the album. He wanted an album where all the songs stood out as singles. Because, like Thriller, all of them, more or less every song on it was released as a single, give or take.
So I guess the idea was any song on this album could be released as a single at any given time itself.
Yeah, and it would stand on its own. Because some albums from even great artists, some album tracks can be classed as filler or a B-side, and they don't, and they're not a strong song. But that's what his album brief was. Is he wanted every single song to stand by itself and could be released as a single if necessary.
Well, I think is a good sign of a producer in the sense that they wanted everything to be quality. And the really good thing about an album that speaks to you, or albums we've talked about in the past that I think we all really appreciate, is there are some albums that require a lot of filler. And there's some albums I've listened to and I could listen to from all the way through and love every minute of it.
Yes. We
were recently talking about one from ABBA. You probably know which one I'm talking about.
Yes.
The Stranger.
Visitors.
Yes, The Visitor. Why did I say Stranger, Tim? The Visitors. Anyway, that album, if you listen to it from point A to point B, it's fantastic all the way across. It's probably one of their most recent albums, recent in relative terms. It's one of their later albums, but it's one of their albums that I feel like every song on it is quality. I don't know of any song, and it tells a story, kind of like you were saying with Flash Gordon earlier, even though it's based off a show. A really good album can do that without even being based off a show.
Yeah, the interesting thing about The Visitors, you're right, it was the very last album they released.
The Strangers, my poor brain.
Yeah. It was the very last album they released as a group, The Visitors. And I'm a fan of ABBA, and I would say that is probably their strongest album.
10 out of 10. And it really doesn't have like their, we know the songs, everybody. To be honest, Dancing Queen is a song I could never hear again. That's one of them. Put it up there on the list. Dancing Queen, I'd much rather hear Voulez-Vous or something. That's don't come from me, French people. I realize that's really bad pronunciation. Or I would just, Take a Chance on Me is overplayed too, but I'd still rather hear the Dancing Queen. Truthfully. But my favorite is Money, Money, Money. Let's be honest. I can say that's one of my all-time favorite. It's one of those songs. It's cool. It's kind of savvy. It's got a different sound. What was interesting about ABBA is all of their music is so unique. From Waterloo to Voulez-Vous to even just like we're talking about Money, Money, Money. Every song was almost like its own movie or TV show in the sense that it painted a picture so well. It was brilliant in the sense that it told you a story. I think that's what makes ABBA one of my top artists, because we're talking about albums doing that, but I feel like every ABBA song that was really good did that really well. And so for them to take the whole album of The Visitor, if you've never heard The Visitor, even just the main song called The Visitor, go listen to it. It's gorgeous. It'll make you so happy. Just do it. I think they painted a picture really well. Maybe I'm crazy, but that's what I think ABBA did good.
And you know, an interesting thing about The Visitors as well is that it was one of the first commercially pressed CDs that was available. And when Philips was devising the CD format, when they did their first commercial press run of CDs, ABBA's The Visitors was the first CD that was pressed. Now, it wasn't the first album that was commercially available on CD, but it was one they made they did a pressing run to test their pressing plant, and they distributed those examples to the press and to music journalists and what have you, and it was ABBA The Visitors, and that was the album.
It was like 81, 82, so not early 80s, right?
Yeah, because I mean the CD format was developed in the late 70s, and I think it was 82 it actually hit the market, so it was all about the right time.
It was pushing for the right. It was like that kind of push. But anyway, what else is on the list, Tim? Now that I told everyone why I think ABBA is one of the greatest bands ever.
Well, I should also give a noticeable mention as far as ABBA songs as Gimme, 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 A Man After Midnight.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, which is also a favorite. And you know I love both Mamma Mia 1 and Mamma Mia 2. Because I love my musical theater. I know it's cliche, but I absolutely love it. And Honey, Honey, Honey. Great song.
Yeah.
Great song. I mean, we could go for days. I could think of 1,000. I mean, ABBA is one of those bands, though, that we were talking about. They have had a lot of hits that are played a lot. But, truthfully, they've had, like, multiple hits that are used over and over and over.
Yes.
Not just one or two songs. I'd say, like, 6 or 7 of their songs are constantly used on repeat. Obviously, we all know Dancing Queen is the number one that's played on repeat. But, I mean, Take a Chance on Me is probably played in, like, 50 movies?
Mm-hmm.
I would say easily. I would say Give Me a Man After Midnight's been played in every one of probably late 70s, early 80s, 90s, whenever that came out. That probably was played in like every kind of dance scene when they're in the middle of a club at night or something. Even Mamma Mia did it. Truthfully, that's the scene they did it in.
Mm-hmm.
But so I would say they probably, dang, how much is ABBA worth royally?
I mean, Benny and Bjorn are the ones who wrote all the songs, and I think they are. They're not making George Thorogood bad to the bone money. I would say that they're sitting in Sweden very comfortable.
I would imagine so, though, because if you think about it. And I mean, have you ever met anyone who's been like, I don't like ABBA? I'd be like, we can't be friends.
I mean, I think, how could you not like ABBA?
So I have this theory about Sublime. If I met somebody in life, and now I don't mean that you don't know them, but if I met someone who absolutely hated Sublime, I'd be like, well, I'm out. Peace. I mean, you don't have to like them, but I've actually never heard anyone who says, I hate Sublime. And now that I'm looking back, that's the way I feel about ABBA. If someone told me they hated ABBA, I'd be like, we can't be friends. I'm out.
Well, you know, this almost goes on to the conversation that I think we've had previously, and I think we may have even had it on the podcast before. My theory is that the whole concept of a guilty pleasure should not exist.
Nope, not even a little bit.
That should not exist. You know, if you like something, you should just like it.
As the avid Spice Girl lover, as the person who has no qualms about what I like and what I don't like, it's a stupid concept. There are songs from many artists that I don't even care for, but there are certain songs in their repertoire that I absolutely adore. Mm-hmm. And the idea that you should feel guilty about liking something is just dumb. And it just kind of makes people feel bad. It also limits people wanting to listen to artists. Idea of, oh, well, you shouldn't listen to Justin Bieber because he's, this person that no one cares about. Well, what does it matter? I actually like the song Sorry by Justin Bieber, and I'm not sorry about it. With that being said, the idea of a guilty pleasure is the stupidest thing in the world. And these guilty pleasure playlists and stuff, I'm like, no, I don't have any guilt. I'm not guilty about it. It is what I like.
No, you like what you like. Because, I mean, I remember going back years ago, I remember going on a coach trip to Germany with my granddad years and years ago, and I had a cassette Walkman. And on side A of the cassette that I had was Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. because I just got into playing guitar, I was into that kind of thing. I probably wasn't completely burned out on Sweet Child of Mine at that point. It was fine, going back to our earlier discussion. On the other side was Nana Cherry's Raw Like Sushi, which has like Buffalo Stance. It may have had Manchild on it. I don't know. I don't think it had Manchild on it. But it certainly had Buffalo Stance. And it was that kind of early 90s hip-hop, dancey type stuff that I was still into at the time. But the point being is that even back then, in my formative musical years, I saw no difference between the two. They were two albums I enjoyed. They're two albums I bought. So I didn't have to like go in one lane or the other lane. It was like I just liked both.
You know what's very interesting about this, and Tim probably knows about this because Tim's like me, but Run DMC and Aerosmith.
Mm-hmm.
So when they did Walk This Way, first of all, it was iconic. Yes, that's probably an overplayed song. If that's the only song you know by Run DMC or you know by Aerosmith, I would love you to go out and just YouTube them and find more. There's plenty of other great songs by them. But even if it's the only one you know, that's fine. It's a great song. I actually love Walk This Way. I think I said Run This Way a minute ago, but Walk This Way. Don't run, everybody, walk. So anyway, no, I was saying Run DMC. Maybe I got the words confused. Anyway, so what I was going to say, though, is when they produced that album, it was a lot of work to get that album put together because it was the first real mashup of a truly R&B hip-hop artist. Mm-hmm. You got Run DMC, and what most people would find is an iconic kind of rock artists. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Aerosmith, Steven Tyler, his voice is iconic. We all know this. So when they were putting it together, apparently they didn't really like each other very much if you look at some of the documentaries. Mm-hmm. But what came out of this was one of those great collaborations that said that music isn't as far apart as we think it is. Mm-hmm. And it's something and it actually helped Run DMC become more mainstream. Mm-hmm. Because there are generally maybe... Besides maybe, what is the rap band I'm thinking of that does? I'm going to look it up. But they're one of the first mainstream rap R&B hip hop artists of all time. Early 80s.
Yeah.
What is the other band I'm thinking of that does? I'll have to look it up in a minute. But there's another band that I'm thinking of that's also known for being. So what was interesting is if you look at it, though, apparently they didn't really like each other. But what came out of it is they had a great mashup of two different genres and two different people who could listen to other music. And I feel like, I watched a whole documentary on it at one point, they said that it opened people who maybe didn't know a lot about rock or maybe didn't know a lot about R&B to looking into other genres of music and being open to it. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. That was one of the most historically iconic pieces of music. And they actually came to Steven Tyler and he was like, it's never going to work. And they came to Run DMC and they're like, it's never going to work. Neither of them were on happy terms. They didn't think producing wise, they're like, this is dumb. We're never going to have it. And what is it? What would you say? It's one of the most iconic pieces of music of all time? Yeah,
I mean, like you say, at that juncture, it was the first rock rap collaboration, and it led to a lot of other things. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big fan of theirs, but are you familiar with the rock metal band Anthrax?
I know who they are, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean their whole sound is that rock rap crossover. That is their whole sound. And Aerosmith and Run DMC led the way for that. And then you wouldn't have had a Korn or a Limp Bizkit or any of those kind of acts without that, because they were the ones who mashed those two genres together.
Right, and that's what's interesting is if you've ever looked up, and you don't really think about when you were listening to that and you're like, that was great. I don't know that the historical value in that goes into it, but as someone who appreciates music of all genres, I think it is very important. But yeah, that's one of the most iconic songs of all time. And truthfully, I don't even know that I think it is overplayed, but it's not as overplayed as some of the other people we've talked about on this episode, truthfully.
No, I mean, Walk This Way is covered in a few like pub cover bands. I mean, I've played it in pub cover bands, but I don't think it's completely burnt out. I tell you one Aerosmith song that is utterly burnt out, though I don't have that I want to switch it off reaction about it, is Dream On.
I knew that's where that was going. Or as my husband, who only knows one Aerosmith song, and he just goes, I want to hear the Armageddon song. That's what Charlie thinks that song is called, anyway.
Interestingly enough, that's not even written by Aerosmith. It's a Diane Warren song.
That doesn't shock me in any way. He just constantly goes, he legitimately has no concept of, because see, probably my favorite song by Aerosmith is probably Love in an Elevator. I know that sounds weird to say out loud, but it's probably my favorite Aerosmith song, truthfully. If I'm listening to it. But he'll just be like, my husband's obsessed with the most melodramatic songs. So that's where this comes from. Obviously, if you've ever watched Armageddon, you know what song I'm talking about. But he just goes, and then the other one that he always wants to hear is Hero by Ricky Iglesias.
Okay.
Which is also a melodramatic song. And he just goes, I want to hear the Hero song. I'm like, no. All right, Tim, what else is on the list?
Well, this is a one which maybe I feel completely burnt out about, and it's overplayed purely because it's a cover band thing. Now, I think the radio, classic rock radio, etc., probably it gets played a lot, but purely from a cover band perspective, I am burnt out on it. And that would be Van Morrison's Brown Eyed Girl.
Okay. I know this, but I'm going to come in with you guys with the nostalgia. My father used to sing that song to me as a child. He used to, so my parents are big into that almost Van Morrison kind of sound. They like their beach music. They like their Motown sound. And Van Morrison is kind of one of those middle ground, almost kind of Motown sound, but not quite. Kind of has that rock sound. You know that genre I'm talking about. That's gorgeous. And so for me, Brown Eyed Girl has a very special place in my heart. So I can't say anything bad about it. I'm sorry, Tim. I will keep playing, because even my twin sister was named after the fine young looking glass Brandy. Brandy, you're a fine girl, which is that same genre of music that I kind of put into that. I'm named after Joy. Well, there's a debate. I may have been named after a baby who died on the Waltons. I may have been named after the song Joy to the World. We don't know. There's a debate in my house. Mom thought it was one thing. Dad thought it was another thing. So that kind of music, though, has a very special place in my heart. So I can't say anything bad about it. But I do imagine there's a lot of people in clubs and bars requesting it to their significant others or just wanting to hear it because it has that sound. Kind of like nitty gritty dirt band fishing in the dark type, but almost meets a rock music kind of sound. That kind of genre, I imagine, is very popular when you're doing cover bands. Yeah,
and it's one of those songs that sits in the set of every kind of band that you're in. I mean,
but the disheartening part about that is it's Van Morrison. Almost all of his music is gorgeous.
Yeah.
He has one of the most, I am a huge Van Morrison fan. He has one of the best overall, probably, of like genres of music. Like I would say he's got a little bit of everything. His voice is gorgeous. He meets that kind of almost kind of beach music, kind of jazzy, bluesy kind of sound. I mean, Mama Told Me Not to Come it speaks to my heart. I listen to that song once a week, probably. Might be because my last name's Morrison. I don't know. But just saying.
Mama Told Me Not to Come is Three Dog Night.
No, not Mama Told Me to Come. Mama, what is that song that he has? Oh, the one about what's the name of it? Tim's coming for me. What's the song I'm thinking about? He says, Mama, there'll be days like this.
Oh, days like this. Yeah.
That's what I meant, Internet. Don't come for me. Thank you for searching. They would have put me down. But like Brown Eyed Girl, there'll be days like this. Those type songs I listen to probably once a week. Into the Mystic. That is him. Don't come for me, Internet. I know this. But now I just got it confused with the other one. But Mama told me that there'll be days like this. Anyway, that is like my favorite. That kind of sound though is gorgeous to me, and I grew up on it. So I can't come for the Brown Eyed Girl. I'm just not going to do it.
Okay, well, if that's the case, I'll raise you for the next one. This is another one, again, overplayed in cover bands. I've played this 1,000 more times. And certainly for our UK listeners, this was in a chewing gum commercial back in the day. And this and I was burnt out on it after that, because after it was in this chewing gum commercial, it got re-released, and then all more cover bands played it, and it never goes away. And this is
Mama Said. That's the actual name. Mama Said. That's the full name. Continue.
Well, this one is Freeze All Right Now.
Like, all right now.
Yeah,
that song?
That would be the one, yes.
I don't think I even knew who sang that, truthfully, to this. Do you say it's Freeze?
Free, Free, free.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I thought it said Freeze. I'm like, Freeze all right now. That is one of the most overplayed songs. It's been used in every car commercial, every movie.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure it was on Glee at some point. That is one that I'll give you, Tim. You can take your Van Morrison, even though I forgot the name of the last song I was trying to reference. And I'll trade you that one because that's one that I've heard a million times.
Yeah, and as I said, it's one of those ones that all cover bands seem to play. And it's like, oh, I mean, it's Paul Rodgers as a singer. Paul Rodgers was in Bad Company. He's got great songs in Bad Company. I mean, there's loads of other great songs.
But Bad Company by Bad Company.
Yeah, Bad Company by Bad Company is actually a really good song.
I remember trying to explain that to someone. No, the band is Bad Company and the song is Bad Company. It's phenomenal if you've never heard it.
Yeah, there's a lot of Bad Company going on there. It's like Bad Company squared.
There was some marketing in that one, Tim.
Absolutely.
But no, in all seriousness, no. But I will say, now that you said it, it's going to be in my head for the next 6 weeks. Because when you said it, I was like, wait, does he mean this song? Because truthfully, I don't know that I ever really thought about who sang it because it's been in every car commercial since I was 9.
And I can tell you an interesting personal rock and roll fact about All Right Now. So I played it in a bunch of bands, played it in Rough Justice, which was a rock band I was in many years ago. And I thought I knew how
got a name drop, everybody.
Yeah. And I thought I knew how the riff went. And then we had this bass player who wasn't our bass player for very long. It was just a temporary thing. He played half a dozen or so gigs with us. And he came around my house at the time, and I had to teach him some songs. I'll teach him, the set and show him how some of the songs were. And we played All Right Now, and he's like, no. He said, you said you're playing it wrong. The riff is played like this. He said on the track, on the album, it's play, or the song, it's played, there's 2 guitars at once. But he said, when Paul Kossoff played it, he played it in this way. And I went, oh, okay. He said, yeah. He said, I used to jam with Paul Kossoff, and he showed me. Now, I don't know if that is true.
That's like you just telling me about the song from Van Morrison. Tim, that's hilarious. I'm sorry.
So,
I don't know.
Every time I play All Right Now, when I play the riff of All Right Now, it was showed to me by a bass player who claimed that the guitarist from Free was his friend, and he showed him how it's done. There you go, Internet.
Woo! So there, I have an example of that. So I am not a drummer by any stretch. If you've ever heard me play the drums, I'm sorry for your ears. Bad drummer. But I did try to play the drums at one time. And what was it? We were playing some James Taylor songs in this cover band that I was in. And there was a drum solo in one of the James Taylor songs. Let's be honest. There's probably 37. It was just like a tom roll, basically. Mm-hmm. You got your toms, you do a roll. Well, I was really bad at it. Just truthfully the worst. Well, we were doing it, and I want to say... I can't remember what song it was. It doesn't matter. Think of every it's not Fire or Rain, but every stereotypical James Taylor song you could think of. And my mom walked in, and she thought I was so bad. She thought I was doing it on purpose to sabotage. So she walked in, and she was like, and they told me to do a drum roll. And I'm just like, trying really hard, guys. Worst drummer ever. And my mom literally pulled me out and was like, are you trying to sabotage this? And I was like, no, I'm just trying. And this is why I never made it as a drummer, everybody.
Joy, it's the enthusiasm, which is important. It's your passion. That's the important part.
Yeah, my mother didn't see it that way. And literally the music stopped. You hear my terrible and I mean, I'm just trying. I can name every drum in that drum set. I can tell you what you're supposed to be hitting at any time. Problem is I have what's known as delayed hand-eye coordination, and you don't want that in a drummer because you're about half a second off on all your beats. I also just you have to have a groove to you, just like a good bass player has to have a groove. You have to have a groove to you to be a good drummer. I'll just stick to singing and piano because the drums were not my thing. I even tried to play the bongos and they were just as bad. Nope, not for me, Tim.
Well, I'm glad you come to the realization it wasn't quite for you, and you can enjoy the other things that you like.
There are other things I'm good at. Apparently not naming music at the moment, but in all seriousness, because I'm getting my songs confused. But in all seriousness, guys, if you ever had to witness me drumming, I'm sorry. Anyone listening, if you were listening to me drumming 20 years ago, I'm sorry. All right, Tim, anything else on the list?
Well, I tell you what, Joy, let's wrap up this episode, and I'll wrap it up with one last song, which I found, which is another overplayed classic, one that's heard so much, yet it's a great song.
Okay.
But it's they have albums and albums and albums, and again, this is the only one people know, and it's the only one they ever play, and it would be Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin.
I should have known. I should have known that's where this was going. Did you know there's a whole theory that like Stairway to Heaven though is like been copied from other music, and like there's like a whole rabbit hole you can fall down with that one?
Sure, yeah. And in fact, the whole first Led Zeppelin album, when it originally came out, it was credited to Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, John Bonham, John Paul Jones, etc., whoever supposedly wrote the songs. And in subsequent reissues of it, all of those songs are now credited to old blues artists, because they basically ripped off a bunch of old blues artists and claimed it as their own work.
Yeah, there's like a whole thing that if you go down the YouTube rabbit hole about Stairway to Heaven or any of their first albums, and you go back and listen, you can literally hear. And I'm not one to jump to the conclusion that a song is stolen. I actually think there's only so many chords in the world. There's so many sounds. I don't know that a lot of it is intentional. I think you hear things and subconsciously enter your brain, and maybe when you're picking up the guitar, you accidentally do it. Mm-hmm. Truthfully, that's how I feel. But they specifically, if you go back and look, there's a rabbit hole you can jump down that can go from Led Zeppelin to Breakfast at Tiffany's, and it will like make your mind blown.
Yeah.
I mean, like Supertramp, Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah, I've heard the thing about Stairway to Heaven, and you're right, where people, there's various other songs that almost sound identical to it. Mm-hmm. And like you say, when you're writing songs, your mind is a sponge. You're absorbing all this stuff. And like you said, there's only so many chords, there's only so many riffs, so it's inevitable at some point you're going to create something that sounds somewhat similar to something else. But that said, I think a lot of the Led Zeppelin stuff, certainly the first album, is so blatant that to the point, they said now, where the credits on the album actually have those old blues artists as credited as the songwriters. And
that's where it's kind of getting a little crazy, because if you go back and you listen and you compare it, and like there are other songs that you can start from the beginning of and I have to go look at whatever they think Stairway to Heaven is copied from. Mm-hmm. You start from that song, you go to Stairway to Heaven. It literally, like I said, leads you all the way to Breakfast at Tiffany's, Supertramp. Like that kind of, like you can do a whole like rabbit hole down. And I remember, and then, Supertramp was also recently redone by that modern day song. Take a look at your girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's the only one I got. There was a modern day song. What's that band? Anyway, it doesn't matter. You guys know what I'm talking about. So Supertramp even goes further down the line. There's a whole thing with No Doubt, which I think we talked about because they've got their ska sound. Mm-hmm. There's a song from No Doubt that if you start from No Doubt and you work your way back, it goes all the way back to Led Zeppelin and back to. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's very interesting because, like I said, this is our last little piece here, but I'm one of those ones that I don't jump to assume that it's stolen. I don't believe that. But when you listen to theirs, yeah, it's a little rough. It's a little rough. Exactly. And if you hear Jimmy Page talk about it, he kind of like tries to avoid it. I don't know if you've heard him in interviews or whatever, but he just kind of tries to disassociate himself with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm Jimmy. I heard I will close with a funny story I heard about Jimmy Page. So, well, it's not directly about Jimmy Page. So, David Lee Roth, before he joined back with Van Halen in 2006, 2007, he was out playing Van Halen covers with a cover band. And he always had a guitar player with him who could play exactly like Eddie Van Halen. And that he always had them. And sometimes he even recruited them from Van Halen tribute bands because he wanted that very particular sound. So he had this guy who was playing guitar, and this guy, they're out on tour, and I think he was the guitar player was skateboarding or doing something. Anyway, he dislocated his finger on his fretting hand on his left hand. And he said to Dave, he said, look, Dave, I don't know if I can play. He said, I've dislocated my finger. It's incredibly painful. I can barely hold the chords down or the notes down. It's just not going anywhere. And apparently David Lee Roth said to him, he said, right, this is what you do. Before we play, drink down an entire bottle of Jack Daniels. And he said, your playing will be a bit sloppy, but he said it never hurt Jimmy Page's career.
What? Way to end that one. Oh, okay. I have so many questions, but with that was a great ending.
Okay, everybody, we're going to say goodbye. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
To another day to